Welcome back. Our deep dive today is really about moving music, moving it out of just, entertainment and
Right.
putting it squarely in the clinic. We've pulled together some fascinating studies. They really show music isn't just like a nice background thing, but a powerful, measurable therapeutic tool.
Exactly. And if you've maybe dismissed music as purely subjective before, well, this might make you reconsider. We're looking at how things like rhythm, melody, even just cathartic noise can physically alter your behavior, how it changes your stress hormones, maybe even reorganizes neurological function. We've got sources covering, well, quite a range from highly aggressive kids to healthy adults
Hmm.
whose cardiovascular systems actually visibly calm down with certain classical pieces. It's pretty amazing stuff.
Okay, let's unpack that. Starting with emotional regulation. Is music like a mood changer, or is it more of a processing tool? We can start with a study that sounds a bit counterintuitive, actually. It was a 15-week intervention in South Korea. Targeted children, aged 10 to 12, identified as highly aggressive.
Right. And this wasn't just passive listening, which is key. It was a group music intervention run by certified professional music therapists.
Okay, so professionals involved, what did they actually do?
Well, the structure is important here. It had four therapeutic phases, but the one that really stands out, I think, was the catharsis phase. This is where the kids were actually encouraged to express their inner anger by playing percussion instruments,
Yeah.
literally playing loud, intensely to sort of get the emotion out.
Hold on. Telling an angry kid to, hit a drum. Isn't that a bit, well, isn't there a risk? Doesn't that maybe amplify the aggression? Create a habit of, like, physical venting?
Yeah, it seems like it might, doesn't it? But the outcome actually suggested the opposite. The goal wasn't just making noise; it was about channeling that energy and then regulating it. And the core finding was pretty clear. This intervention significantly reduced their aggressive behavior. It seemed to give them a non-destructive way to process really intense feelings.
Okay, so channeling the emotion, not just suppressing it.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And that links quite neatly to another finding, this one from the University of Queensland. This looked at what they called extreme music.
Hmm.
Heavy metal, emo, punk, screamo, music that's typically described as chaotic, loud, powerful.
Hmm. And this one really challenges that old parental fear, that listening to angry music leads to bad behavior.
Yeah.
The way they did it was interesting, too. Participants, aged 18 to 34. First, they went through what they called an anger induction session, basically deliberately triggering them by having them discuss real upsetting stuff, relationship issues, money problems.
Okay, so they got them genuinely worked up. Then what?
Then they either listened to their own chosen extreme music or they just sat in silence.
And the finding.
It defied all the stereotypes. Listening to the extreme music did not make them angrier. It actually worked almost exactly like the percussion in the kids' study. It provided an outlet. It helped them feel better, process difficult emotions like anger and anxiety in a healthy way.
Right, so it's not necessarily changing the mood from angry to happy.
No, exactly. What this seems to tell us is that people often gravitate towards music that matches their current high arousal state. If you're stressed or angry, trying to force yourself to listen to something like, I don't know, don't worry, be happy, it just doesn't fit, does it? The music helps you recognize and maybe validate the emotion. It's a processing tool, not necessarily a mood switch.
That emotional processing angle is powerful. But can we move beyond just how people feel? Can we measure this physically? Does music actually have a verifiable effect on, say, your body's basic systems?
Oh, absolutely. And this is where the hard data gets really hard to argue with. We looked at a randomized controlled study. It compared the physiological effects of listening to Mozart, Strauss, ABB, or just resting in silence, and the results. They show clear system regulation based on the musical structure itself.
Okay, let's talk specifics. Blood pressure.
Yeah, the findings on systolic blood pressure were pretty striking. Both Mozart and Strauss caused a significant drop. Mozart dropped it by an average of 4.7 millimeter Hg, Strauss by 3.7 millimeter Hg, and that was significantly more than the drop you got just from resting in silence, which was only about 2.1 millimeter Hg.
Wow. So classical music works. But what about pop? What about EBBA?
Well, that's what's equally important. ABBA was kind of the control music group that didn't work. Listening to ABBA resulted in, well, basically no relevant change compared to silence, maybe 1.7 millimeter Hg drop, so negligible. And that suggests the mechanism isn't just about pleasant listening or distraction. It hints that the structured predictability, maybe the skillful composition in those classical pieces, that's the real driver. It's causing a measurable physiological response, something significant enough for a doctor to actually notice.
And that structural influence carried over to cortisol too, right?
Yeah.
Our main stress hormone.
Oh, definitely. The cortisol effect was maybe even more dramatic than the blood pressure. Now, all groups showed some drop because obviously just resting helps lower stress a bit. But Mozart and Strauss, they caused the largest reductions by a long shot. So, for instance, the Strauss group saw a mean fall of about 4.76 micrograms per deciliter. Compare that to only 2.39 for the silence group.
So the right kind of music basically doubles your body's ability to shed stress hormones compared to just sitting quietly.
That's what this data suggests, yeah. Music, when it's structured correctly, seems to amplify that relaxation response.
I did find a curious detail in there, though, about demographics. It mentioned men reacted with a larger fall in cortisol to Mozart and Strauss than women did. Any idea why?
That's a really interesting observation. The study authors didn't draw firm conclusions on why. It could be related to baseline stress processing differences, maybe sensitivity of the hormonal feedback loop. It definitely suggests the way music influences us might not be completely universal across genders. Something for future research, for sure.
Okay. And the study also tried to kind of pinpoint what makes music beneficial for calming the heart and circulation. They listed things like high periodicity, a pleasant key, harmony that isn't rousing, and interestingly, no sung words.
Yes, and that's a perfect link, actually. If the absence of sung words helps reduce stress, it sort of suggests that taking away the language processing, that cognitive load, it maybe frees up the brain to focus just on the rhythm and structure.
Which leads us straight into the neurology, the hardwiring. Music clearly interacts directly with our motor systems, even pain pathways. There was an NIH summary that noted meditative music boosts serotonin and dopamine, the feel-good chemicals, while dropping cortisol.
And we can even put a number on the pain relief effect. They found music reduced perioperative pain, that's pain around surgery time, by about 1.4 points on a 10-point scale. And before surgery, they found music was basically as effective as giving someone a benzodiazepine, like Valium, for reducing stress and anxiety.
Wow, as effective as a drug. And that rhythm focus pays off neurologically too, doesn't it? Rhythm perception strongly involves the motor parts of the brain. The classic example here is Parkinson's disease.
Exactly. In Parkinson's, the internal motor system is impaired, right? The timing cues are off. But researchers found that using self-generated rhythmic cues, so not just listening to a metronome passively, but techniques like the person singing, or even just mentally singing a rhythm, these are highly effective at improving their gait, their walking.
Effective.
Significantly. When patients use these internal sort of optimized cues, their walking speed, their cadence, their stride length, they all increased quite a bit. It suggests these internal rhythms actually activate key brain areas like the basal ganglia and the cerebellum, essentially giving the motor system an external framework to kind of bypass the disease's internal disruption.
So we've gone from music as a personal tool for mood and hormones to a precise neurological tool that can actually help overcome physical impairments, which naturally leads us to think about how this is formally applied in mental health care.
Right. And when we talk about psychiatric treatment, the clinical literature draws a very important distinction. We need to be clear on the terms.
Okay, what are they?
So there's music therapy with capital letters, sort of. That's the deep active partnership. It's described as a reflexive co-creative process. It's led by a certified therapist, and it uses the musical experience and the therapeutic relationship to drive change. Then there's music medicine. That's often more passive listening, maybe prescribed music or self-selected music, used more as a tool just to stimulate a process like relaxation.
Got it. Therapy is active and relational. Medicine is often passive listening for a specific effect. So if we look at the formal music therapy, how widely is it used? What's the evidence like?
The scope is actually huge. We looked at a large transdiagnostic meta-review. Transdiagnostic meaning it looked across many different diagnoses. And it found that when music therapy was added to standard care, whatever that might be for the condition, it showed therapeutic value across all the studied psychiatric disorders. Things like autism, dementia, depression, schizophrenia, even insomnia and substance use disorders.
Across the board, What did the pool data show, like overall effects?
Yeah, the pooled data was very positive overall, significant improvements across multiple diagnoses. For depression, anxiety, and quality of life, the effect sizes were rated medium to large. For depression, for example, the standardized mean difference, or SMD, was 0.57, which in clinical terms is a clear, statistically significant therapeutic effect.
Did it show promise in conditions that are known to be really tough to treat?
It did, actually. For schizophrenia, music therapy significantly improved general symptoms, but also notably the negative symptoms, things like apathy, withdrawal, which are often harder to shift. And for substance use disorders, they found a medium effect on reducing craving and also on increasing motivation for treatment and change, which is obviously crucial. There was even a dose response seen there, like more than an hour of music therapy seemed linked to a greater drop in substance craving.
Okay, these results sound incredibly promising, especially across such a wide range of challenging conditions. There's usually a but, isn't there? What's the critical caveat we need to bear in mind here?
Yes, there is an essential limitation. Durability. While the effects right at the end of the treatment period were positive, those significant gains, specifically in areas like depression, anxiety, and quality of life, they were not maintained at follow-up. And also importantly, the overall quality of the evidence across all these results was rated as low or very low,
Why low quality?
mainly due to methodological weaknesses and just a lot of variability across the individual studies they included in the review. Different methods, different populations, different ways of measuring things.
So the science is definitely promising, points in the right direction, but the studies themselves need to be perhaps more rigorous, more consistent, to make the results fully robust.
Precisely. And the other really key practical takeaway, especially for listeners maybe thinking about music therapy, is the importance of dosage. The amount of therapy was a really strong predictor of the outcomes. The data we looked at suggests that, well, you might see small effects after maybe 3 to 10 sessions, but you generally need more like 10 to 24 sessions to start seeing medium effects. And it could take anywhere from 16 up to 51 sessions to really estimate getting a large, hopefully lasting impact.
Right, so it's not a quick fix. It requires commitment over time, like most effective therapies. Okay, so wrapping this up, we started by asking if music is a mood changer or a system regulator. And the evidence is pretty clear it's actually both, isn't it?
It really does seem to be. It's an effective tool for catharsis, for emotional processing, especially in those high arousal states we talked about. But it's also demonstrably a system regulator. It can calm hormones, lower blood pressure, and even synchronize neurological function to improve motor control in specific conditions.
Yeah, the data really is moving music from just the artistic realm firmly into the medical one.
Yeah.
It emphasizes how much real mechanism is involved,
Yeah.
well beyond just aesthetic pleasure or liking a tune.
It's physiology, it's neurology.
So here's a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe chew on. We know from other research, which we didn't dive deep into today, but it's out there, that music training, especially in childhood, offers measurable health and cognitive benefits. Better executive functions, for example, particularly in key developmental windows, say ages 6 to 10. Yet we also know, realistically, that access to quality music education in, say, public schools is often not an equitably distributed resource at all.
Right. And given all the physiological and clinical evidence we've just discussed, the stress reduction, the motor improvements, the emotional processing support, you start to see music less as an extra and more as potentially, well, a measurable public health imperative.
So the question becomes, if music truly is a pathway to better health, better cognitive function, better well-being, what is the real societal cost down the line of denying these basic measurable benefits, particularly to disadvantaged children who might benefit most? It's a powerful question and something we hope you explore further on your own.